Hello and welcome to Practical Sheets, where I bring you every week Google Sheets tutorials where I show you how to do systems to use in your projects, in your companies, or in your personal life. Today, I'm going to show you how to do a web app, a very simple web app, where you're going to have a list. It could be the list of your students, of your customers, of your listings, of your projects, whatever. And then you can show it in a web app, in a web page, where you don't have to worry that someone will screw up your formulas, will screw up your names, will change it. This is really nice for consultation for people, your customers, your agents, where they want to see their clients, their projects, but you don't want them to start changing things. So this is a really nice way, and you don't have to be worried that people don't have Google Sheets, don't know how to use Google Sheets, they are in their cell phone, whatever. So this is a really nice way to make accessible your information for anyone you want. Maybe it's only the people in your organization, or any customer, or just some people in your team, whatever. Okay, so this is it. I hope you like it. I know you like it. But before moving on, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel, or even further, explore the Patreon page or practicalsheets.com, where you'll find the code and the template for these and the more than 60 videos that we have in the channel, and additional courses in Google Sheets, Google Forms, Google Apps Script, and much, much more. Now let's move on. So let's begin. What we're going to do is to take this table and show it in a web app. So the first thing we need is the table that I already went ahead and created it. So this is a very short list of projects. This is what I want to show. So let's go extensions, app script. The first thing we need to do a web app is a specific function called simple trigger that it's always going to be do get. There are some times when we may use do post, but do get managed to do the job, and it's really nice. I'm not an expert in these subjects, but what I know is that do get sends information, do post receives information, something like that, but maybe I'm wrong. For now, just you need to know do get. I'm going to do a bit of zoom, and in order to do a web app, you need an HTML page. There are a couple of ways of doing HTML pages with this HTML service. The ones we're going to use are these four: HTML output from file, or template from file, or template. It depends on what do you want to do. If you want to show information, if you want to receive information. Many times you're going to have a mix of both show and receive information. When you're going to show information, there are couple of ways of doing it. However, the most simple one is through this create template. But we're going to do create template from file. It's much easier. But for now, let's create a template, and it's very easy to do. We are going to need an HTML line or text. So here we can just say, we can have a header and say hello world. If you don't know anything about HTML, well, you just need to know for now that it's comprised of tags. That's it. Everything is inside tags, but you could leave it out of tags and it would work anyway. Okay? So it almost will work, but the thing is that when you do create template, you always need to evaluate it. So let's call this, you want HTML, something simple. And at the end, you need to do return HTML.evaluate. Okay, this is the way to make this work. Let's save. Now we have to deploy it for this to work. If I run it here, it's going to ask for some permissions, but it will not do anything. Okay, you don't see anything. For this to deploy as a web page, we're going to go to new deployment, new deployment, and let's do a web app. Let's call this project listing. I have two setups. The first one is execute as. So many cases you can execute it as yourself and it will work fine. The thing that you're going to change once you publish it is who has access. For now, you're just doing tests on yourself, so only myself will work great. Let's do deploy. Okay. And now what you need is this URL. So we're going to go to this URL, control click, and here I have my hello world. Nice. Okay. However, let's say, for example, that I change this hello world to hello world, I'm Juan. Let's save. I'm going to update here and I don't see anything. Why? Because this deployment, it's like when you do a production of a website or anything, when you do a render of a project, this is what it is and it's your final version. So if you want to render this other thing that you changed, then you have to deploy it again. But given that we're doing tests and we're going to have a lot of changes while we do tests, so we're going to use the test deployment. So let's go to test deployment and we are going to use, this is the one we're going to use. Okay, so you identify it because the final deployments or the official deployments finished in exec, EXEC, while the test deployments finish in DEV. Okay, hello world, I'm Juan, and if I change it again, I'm Juan Guzman, and save it, and you just reload it, then you have the changes. Okay, so you will need the final deployment when you're going to share it with somebody, but you need the developer to see the changes in real time and you don't have to deploy it every time again and again and again. Okay, you may see in some tutorials or when you try to look at other web apps, you will also see this, create HTML output. The difference is that you don't have to evaluate the HTML output. You're just going to return the HTML. Let's save and let's refresh and it works the same. Okay, the big difference between output and template is that in template you're going to be able to send some variables to the HTML, and this we're going to need it. Okay, so let's leave it as we had with template. However, we're going to create a much more complex HTML, so a line or a text won't be enough. So what I'm going to do is to delete this. I'm going to say create template from file, and we're going to create a file. This file, we can call it however we want. A main page, listing, whatever. So let's call it listing. I'm going to create a new file, but not a script file, but an HTML file. Okay. And we're going to call this listing. It has to be called exactly as we have it here without the .html. Okay. Let's save. And here it creates a very basic HTML. And here I can put again my hello world. Let's close the h1 tag. Let's save. And let's reload. And it's working exactly as it did. I just changed the idea that the HTML, I'm not giving it directly here, but in a file. So now I have more flexibility to do an HTML file with more and more things. Okay. So what do we want to show here? We want to show a table. Okay. So let's do a very simple table. I could use the table HTML. Always you have to open and close your HTML tags. The HTML tags, inside the table, you need two items. The first item you need are the rows. And you always close it. Don't forget. It's always better to close it immediately so you don't forget that later. Inside the rows, you can have as many rows as you want. Inside your rows, you're going to have TD. That is table data, I think it stands for. So you can have as many table data as you want. So let's do a very simple table. Let's call this similar to this, client project status. To copy this and do another row. And let's do our first client. It will be Juan, and the project will be pivot table, and the status will be in process. Let's save this and see how we can see it in our HTML. So you can see it's a very basic table. Let's not worry about the formatting yet. Just see that this is a table. Okay, a table with 2 rows and 3 columns. Okay. For now, this is well. Now, what I want, this is the first step. It looks really nice, but I don't want to have a static table. I want a table that I can manipulate here in my code. So as I told you, the nice thing about having a HTML template is that you can give it some variables. So for example, you could say, okay, I'm going to have my first heading 1. It's going to be the client. This is the titles, okay? HTML heading 2. It's going to be project, and so on and so forth. Let's do it. Actually, I'm going to do just 2 by 2, so this doesn't last so long. And then I'm going to do HTML.client1. This will be 1, and project 1 will be query function. And now what I'm going to do is to put these variables inside my HTML. Here's the whole trick. So I'm going to use something called scriptlets. Scriptlets is just a tag that is like this. It starts with a less than and question mark, and then it ends the same. Okay? Actually, I'm missing one thing, and is this equal sign. This means show me the variable. Show me a variable that I previously had give to the HTML. This is why HTML evaluate is so important. This is like a way to pack up all the variables and save them and send them to the HTML, more or less. Maybe I'm saying something wrong, but it's more or less like that. So here, instead of client, I'm going to put this heading 1. And here, instead of project, I'm going to say heading 2. Here, I'm going to say client 1. And here I'm going to say project 1. Okay, so let's save and let's reload. Okay, so it's working really nice. I'm doing the same thing, but I'm bringing my variables from here. So you may see how I'm doing this progression, so that the last thing I'm going to do is to connect it to this. Okay. One thing that some of you that are more familiar with HTML would tell me is that the headings, sometimes you use this th. Okay, so this is right. You could replace the td for th for the headings, but for the loops we're going to use later, I don't want to complicate it that much. Maybe we could do it for a second part, but for now I don't want to overcomplicate this. Okay, so this would work with td. The thing is that it won't have the behaviors of a header, but this we may worry about in a later video. Okay, so now we already have the variables, but I know what you're going to say. What if I have 10 columns and 20 rows? Do I have to do heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 20, and client 1, client 2, client 20, and project 1, project 20? No. This is why we could also include not only single variables, but we could also include tables or arrays, better yet. So we're going to call this project table. And we're going to include this, but already in a table. So how is a table or how is an array shown in Google Apps Script? It's like this. So basically, each of these is going to be each individual row. So this will be the headers, this will be the first project, then the second project, and so on and so forth. And this will be the one that encapsulates all of the rows. So this is a table in array nomenclature or notation, okay? So here I'm going to include client, comma, project. And in the second one, I'm going to include my first project, 1, comma, query function. Okay, so now I can delete this, but this won't work here because I haven't connected my project table. If I save this and I upload or reload, then it's saying, what's you told me that you were going to send me a variable called heading, and here there's nothing called heading. You have this project table. Okay, so now what I can do is replace this heading by my project table. If you know anything about arrays in JavaScript or in my previous videos, you may know that the way to read an array is by first telling the row and then telling the column. So here I have, maybe I can show this better. I have here 2 rows. So this is the row in my position 0. This is the row in my position 1. Okay, so if I want to access this first row, then I have to put here 0. Okay, Once I'm in my row, then I have all these elements. Again, this will be 0 and this will be 1. So if I want to access client, then I need to do 0 for this first row and 0 for this first element inside the row. So this will be 0, 0, and the same for all the things. The heading 2 will be the row 0, but the column 1. That is the header for the projects. Here, it's not row 0, it's row 1, where is my first project, but in the column 0, or the first column, that is where I have 1. And finally, we have project table in the row number 1, that is the first project, and column number 1, where I have the name of the project. So if I save and let's reload this, now it's working. Okay? Again, you've seen the progression I've made from individual variables to just one variable that is my table. Okay, perfect. So finally, if you know a bit of JavaScript or any programming language and you know about loops, then you know what my question is, what is similar between these 4 lines? And you can say that the lines are exactly the same. The things that are changing are these numbers. And if I go deeper here, just these 2 lines, what is the only difference between these 2 lines? And you will tell me if you want to pause it down, but the only difference is this 0 and this 1. So what if I created a variable called j, for example? It could be called whatever you want, j. Okay, and here I could create one variable. I'm going to create this variable and say j equals to 0. And then down here, I'm going to say the same, but I'm going to say j equals to j plus 1. What do you think will happen? I'm going to save it and I'm going to reload it. Nothing happens, okay? Why? First, I need to explain to you what is the difference between this scriptlet with the equal sign and this scriptlet that doesn't have the equal sign. The difference is that this is shown in your program, in your web app. This is not shown. This is like behind the scenes. So I'm just creating programming, I'm just doing like a parenthesis to do some programming. I'm just creating the variable, but this won't show. Okay? So here j equals to 0 and here j adds 1. This is the same if I say this, j++. And I don't have to declare the variable again, just j++. Again, save and see that everything's working. Okay? Now, is there a way to have a variable j equal to 0 and then start adding 1 and 1 and 1? The answer is yes, and we can do it with a for loop. Okay? So the for loop, we define a variable that will be this j. It will start in 0, and then we will say, let's start in 0 and let's stop when it arrives to 2. So in my case, is when j equals to 0, you are going to do this. Then we're going to add 1, j++, the same thing we did here, but we're going to do it inside our loop. I'm going to delete this one. I only need this line, because what I'm going to do is open here my bracket, and then I'm going to open again this code scriptlet, and then close my bracket, close it like this. Let's save and let's load it again. I have one problem. Let's see. Here it's semicolon again. Okay, let's save and let's reload, and it's working exactly the same. Okay, so again, what I did was do a loop that starts in j equal to 0. When j equals to 0, I will call this line. Then it will add 1 to j, so now j is 1, and it will run this line again. So the first time I run it, it will render this, and the second time it will render this. Okay? And now I have it to 2, but in the future I could have it to 3, to 4, to 5, to 6. So for now, let's leave it like it is. And in here, we can do the same. Okay? But actually, let's copy this and paste it here. Okay? But now this changes to 0. Okay? Let's save and let's run it again. Again, nothing happens. Everything works perfect. And if I tell you your exercise, I just organize this a bit. So if you see these 7 lines, and then you see these other 7 lines. What is the difference? Please pause and think about it for a minute. So the difference is that the only difference is that this is 0 and this is 1. So it's the same case. So we could simplify this and this with another loop, okay? So here I can say for, let's do another variable. Let's call this I. But again, you could call it whatever you want. I equals to 0. I will be less than 2 because I only have 2 rows. And let's say I plus plus. Let's open our brackets and close our scriptlet. Actually, I forgot to open the scriptlet. Okay. I can delete this. I'm going to open again the scriptlet here and close my bracket and close the scriptlet. And here, the only thing I'm going to change is this I. Okay, if you want to make this simpler, let's put it like this so you don't confuse yourself with all these lines. Let's save and let's reload again. So nothing happens, everything stays the same. So there's one thing missing so that my HTML is perfect, and is this number 2. I don't want this to be number 2, but to depend on this table. So I want to see how long is this table, because in my case it's 2 by 2, but the idea is that this is flexible because for your project maybe you have 5 columns and 10 rows. So not always will be 2, and I don't want you to have to change this always to a fixed number. So there is a property of this project table that is called length. So I could say here project table dot length, and this will give me the number of rows. In this case is 1 and 2. And then I could go to an individual row that could be this first row and ask for the length also. So here I will say project table in the position 0 dot length. In my case, both are 2. Okay, let's save and let's see if everything's working. Everything works the same. So if you're seeing this the last 15 minutes, you say, but you haven't changed anything. This is the same you showed me 20 minutes ago. Yes, but now this is flexible. What do I mean? That now I can go here to this code and say, I'm going to add a new column called status. And I'm going to add a new status called closed. And let's save and let's reload. And it works beautifully. And then if I add another row, and then I save. I forgot something here. I think I have double brackets. Okay, let's save again and let's reload. And now I have my other line. Perfect. So I'm just missing one thing, and is that this project table, I'm going to load it from here. That's it. Nothing else. I'm not missing anything else. So for this, I'm going to go to my worksheet. Worksheet. This will be spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. This connects to my current worksheet. Then I'm going to connect to my spreadsheet. In this case, is this one that is called sheet 1, but maybe I could call it projects. And I'm going to say ws worksheet dot get sheet by name, and the name will be projects. And finally, I'm going to get my table. The easiest way to get your table, if you don't have more than one header, is to do ss.getDataRange. And then you say get values. Very important to do this. And we can call this the project table. So actually I'm going to copy this and paste it instead of my table. Let's save. Let's update. And I think it won't work. Why? Because first I need to run it here one time so that I'm asked for the permissions. Okay, let's reload it. And here it is. It's bringing my table from my Google Sheets. And if I change anything, if date closed or whatever, and I drag it down and then I reload it, I have all of my columns. Well, we could change this. I chose wrongly to do this with dates. Actually, we could change this, forget display values, and we could fix it quickly. Actually, I have this repeated 2 times, so I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to put this get display values. Let's save, and let's reload it here. Perfect. Okay. And if I create a new line here, Maria, and I reload, it works really nicely. Okay. Just one thing before I go, I'm going to go here to Bootstrap just to give it a bit of formatting. It's very easy. I'm just going to go here to include via CDN, and you're just going to copy this, nothing else. We're going to our listing HTML. I'm going to paste it here in my head. This is the only thing you need to paste. Let's save and let's reload it. If you don't know what Bootstrap is, it's just a framework to make easier and nice looking web pages. That's it. So actually here I still need a couple of things. So we could make this a bit better. Here I could do a container. So let's say div, and the class is going to be container. And you can save it here. You have to close it. Remember always to close your tags. Let's save. And let's reload just to give it a bit of space. Let's see what I did wrong. I didn't close this. Okay, save and reload. Now it looks better, but still I don't like it. So we can go here to docs. In customize, I'm going to go to tables. Let's look here for tables. And I could look a really nice table just by adding this class table. So here in table, I'm going to add class table. But this won't work if you didn't paste it this, okay? Now, I'm not, actually I'm going to remove this closed because it damages everything. And I don't want to go into formatting details today. Let's reload. Excellent. Now it looks better. Again, what I told you at the beginning, the thing with the headers is that if you want to have a nice header here, then you would have to have this th. But again, we could leave it for another video. If you like it, we can do a second part. Hopefully you do. But for now, you can have a really nice table. But the nice thing about this is that it uploads or updates automatically. When you add new lines and you reload your page, or someone else sees it, they will see the updated in real time because it is connected. Each time it opens, it goes to your sheet and say, well, show me what's new, and it brings it up. Okay, so a lot of things are missing, and we could see them in the second part. For example, how to remove these. You could add it, for example, in a Google site or embed it in your HTML in your site. We could fix the headers. We could have better format. Then we could add some filters. We could filter, for example, all for Juan Guzman or whatever. There are some bugs in the Chrome, in the cell phone. Sometimes it doesn't show up. So these are things we need to look into detail. But the last thing I'm going to do is deploy it again because I've been deploying it in test mode. So I'm going to manage the deployment so that you don't have to do again a new URL, so that the URL works for if you already shared it with some people and you don't have to change URL. The best thing is not to do a new deployment, but to manage your deployments. You're going to manage the original deployment, and here you're going to say edit. You're going to create a version 2, new version, project listing. If you want here, you could say version 2. And then here we can change now that who has access. Could be anyone with Google account or just anyone. You can choose, let's say anyone for now. Let's deploy. Done. Now I'm going to reload this page, and I have my web app. And I'm going to copy this and go to an incognito window, paste this, as an incognito user, and it works. Okay, so this is it. I hope you like it, and if you like it, then consider subscribing to the channel, or even further supporting me in the Patreon page, or going to practicalsheets.com, where you'll find courses in Google Sheets, Google Apps Script, web apps, and much, much more. Thank you, and see you next time.